Okay, so for this question, right, it's a pure question on a trigo graph, but there's a bit of application. So because the question is quite lengthy, I think some of you, right, when you first glance at it, you would feel very threatened by it. Okay, so actually, so how should you approach it, right? So the first thing you do is you check out the period. So you check out the period. The period will be 360 degree, and in this case that will be 2 pi. And you also check out the amplitude. So you check out the amplitude, this will be a 2. So you got to do a bit of planning first. So this is the kind of planning that you should do. So check out the next one. So again, check out the period. So the period will be 2 pi divided by half. And then the amplitude will be half. Okay, so how are you going to do the planning? So the amplitude will tell you the highest and lowest. Okay, so by right, the amplitude will tell you the highest and lowest. But then, right, there is a shifting up. So because of that, the highest become 2 plus 2. And the lowest become minus 2 plus 2. Okay, so that is the planning. Okay, then this one is a half. So the amplitude is a half. So that means the highest will be a half, the lowest will be a minus half. But because there is also a shifting, so the highest will become half, shifted up with 2. The lowest will become minus half, and you also shifted up with 2. So this will be the few points that you need to take note. So in this question, they never ask you for the highest and the lowest for this graph. Okay, so if let's say they ask you for the highest and lowest for this, then it will be something like 0 to 4. And then in this case, right, if I need to explore this part, then it should be 1.5 to 2.5. So that will help in your planning. So that will help a bit in your planning. And when you do that, you will get something like this. Okay, I'm just going to draw a random one, not a very measured one. So this one is T. Okay, then this is 4 pi. So I always divide in this way. So there will be something like 1, 2, 3, 4. You can be a bit more generous. Okay, my suggestion is you be a bit more generous because this part, the amplitude is a half. So if you're not generous on your axis, you find your graph is a bit tiny. So something like 1, 2, 3. I go a bit more on this part. 4. So the lowest part is a 0. Okay, so both of them have shifting at 2. So later on, this one is like your axis. So how are you going to draw? So if you know that the first one, the highest and lowest is 0. Okay, so and it's a sine graph. That means it's going to be like this. So that's the way I draw. Okay, so that's all. Okay, I'm so sorry. This one is the period. The period is 2 pi. So the period is 2 pi. means at pi over 2, it will be 4. At 3 pi over 2, it will be at 0. So we'll get something like this. So usually a period, my habit is I will divide the period into 4 sections so that it will guide me. So some of you don't have any points to guide. I don't know how you draw. So that's how I draw. So that's the first one. So if I'm going to draw this one, 2.5 is here, and 1.5 is here. And the period is 4 pi. So it will be something like this. This. Oh. So this part will correspond to 2.5. So that is my second one. Okay, so if let's say your scale is not generous enough, you'll find that your red color graph will look almost like a straight line. So you're going to do some planning for your graph. Okay, and then okay, with the graph, we're going to answer the question. Okay, for the first part, they say how many instances the two waves will reach the same height during the interval. So the same height means we don't know what's the same height. So as long as the two waves hit the same height. So the idea is from intersections. So there are three intersections between the two waves. That means how many instances, that means how many times. Put it simply, how many times the wave hit the same height. So there are 3 times the wave hit the same height. How do you justify? Because there are 3 intersections. As simple as that. That's it. So you know that they will reach the same height. So each of the intersection, they got different same height, but they are the same height at the intersection. Okay, then part B, to me personally, I feel is a very unfair context because not all students will have an idea of what is the thrilling experience of riding the wave. So actually, it's not a very international kind of context. So it's like, how do I describe? If let's say you never seen wave surfing or you never tried surfing before, you might not have the idea. So surfing relies on the height of the wave. And also if let's say if there's many waves, then you can surf a lot. Okay, so personally, I tried surfing before, but I didn't know how to read wave. So, but in the actual fact is if there are more waves, it will be there will be more movement, and if the wave is very high, there's also like more movement. So if there is a totally no wave, right, the sea is flat, then there's no way we can surf. So but this context is not so how to say, not so international with a lot of students. So I will say this is an unfair context. Anyway, then how do you explain? Of course, I will explain according to the period and the amplitude. I mean, that's my approach. When I do my planning is based on period and amplitude. So when I try to explain, I will see whether the period of the graph and the amplitude of the graph can relate to this or not. So the first one will be, I explain it using the amplitude. So if you look at based on the amplitude, this is day 1, and then this is day 2. So the amplitude for day 1 is higher than the amplitude of day 2, meaning, right, the wave is actually taller. So it's actually more thrilling for the surfers. So based on the amplitude, I will say that day 1 is actually better. Okay, then what about based on the period? So the period is different. the difference in the period create an extra wave. So if you look right, day 1, we got extra wave here. So can you see like this is one cycle of wave? And then there's another cycle here. So because the period is like half of each other, so for day 1, we end up with 2 cycles of wave. But for day 2, I only end up with 1 cycle. So which one is more thrilling? The one with more cycles will be more thrilling. That means you get to roll around more. So all in all, day 1 is more thrilling for the surfer because the wave is higher and there are more cycles for the surfers to ride the wave. So the actual writing is in the group chat already. So the actual writing is something like this. So I wrote it out. Okay, so you can refer to it. The explanation is exactly how I explained just now. Okay, but of course the drawing looks a bit different. Okay, so hopefully this helps you to see that actually this question is not that difficult. The planning of the graph, you just go according to period, amplitude, highest and lowest. So that should apply to all the trigo graph.